All right, are you guys ready? Because I know I am. We have for you today a nice Kenya roast. You're not! Would BSB say? I assume this bonfire. Go two-headed nightmare, one hit, came over just in time. Alpha, welcome in. Nice to have you. You did come in just in time. BSB. I thought it was just going to be a thing about his British accent, but my oh yeah, it's definitely hilarious. I will agree. Love to see all of those coffee emotes. This bonfire drone is hypnotizing. Well, so for those of you who don't know, as I'm sure most of you do, because it is not your first roast rate that you have experienced with me. However, it is Chesh's. So Chesh, for your information, there is a guy who live streams roasting on Twitch, and his name, Fat Beans, Beans Coffee Lab. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So Fat Beans Coffee Lab. He streams actual roasting of coffee beans on Twitch, and he has special orders coffee that you can purchase from him, which is where I get the majority of my beans from. Actually, it's where I've gotten all of my beans from since we started doing this. So what I usually try to do is, so for example, when you place an order on our good old fatbeanscoffee.com, like BSB shouted out, not shouted out, but the command that we have, you get these lovely little bags. And this is the Kenya that we are trying out today. As you can tell, it is a lighter roast, which, as we found out with the Ethiopian, I'm not the biggest fan of personally. However, through my interactions with Brian and all the roasting that he's done for me, he's made these a little bit darker than he typically does, for my own enjoyment, which is an awesome touch that I think he does. The interactions that I've had with him, the learning that he does through me and my interactions with him, knowing that I'm more of a darker roast fan, and then integrating that into my orders, I think is incredible. It's awesome. It's something that I don't usually get a lot of from, my typical interactions with people. I'll scoot over a little bit, that way I'm more centered. I guess I could change the camera, but yeah, easier to move the entire chair, right? But yeah, so every order that you get, so I get 12-ounce bags from him, which come, like I said, I showed you, in these Fat Beans Coffee Lab. If anybody wants to try these out with me, like our Fat Beans command says, you can go to fatbeanscoffee.com and you can get them. The three that we have to try for the next 3 roast rates are we have a Guatemalan, the Kenya, and I don't remember what the third one is, but it'll be a surprise then. But so the beans, I always show my beans. You can tell based off of from the last couple roast rates that we've had. They're a little bit lighter. Again, that comes from being a lighter roast. This is just, he stops roasting these right after first crack. I've learned so much about coffee just by watching his streams. And I actually, every time that I do an order and he does roast them, I usually shout him out on my Discord, in case anybody's interested in seeing the process of the coffees being made. And I can tell right away, from the grinding of the beans And from the brewing of the coffee, you can already smell the fruity flavors. Um, I don't know if it's going to be like the cherry citrus like it talks about. I'm interested to see if there's any of that milk chocolate sweetness because I am a sucker for chocolate. I mean, I'm a bigger guy. You don't get this body image without liking some sweets, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, you can definitely. I can probably for sure tell you that there's going to be um, the cherry hint to it because you can just smell it. Just when it was roasting, you can smell it in the cup. I'm actually looking forward to this because I'm kind of cold. It was a beautiful day outside, so I had my windows open, and I just now closed them. So we'll try it out, see what we feel. So where's the smell-o-vision when you need it? I know, right? So it reminds me a lot of the same taste that I have with the Ethiopian. Again, this isn't light roasts aren't really my thing, but I'm always trying to expand my palate when it comes to this stuff. I'm never going to be like, oh, it's a light roast, I'm not even going to try it. Just because you can't tell what you enjoy without experiencing everything, right? So you can definitely taste the hint of the fruit to begin with. And when you talk with acidity, you're talking about like the bitterness that comes with it. Um, Usually, from my experiences with the definitions and everything that they tell you to expect, that Brian so graciously puts on the website with all the orders and all the different beans that you have. Usually, the more acidity that it talks about you tasting, usually it talks about the bitterness that comes with it. Which, again, always surprised me because you always think, for me, when I was growing up, you think of acidity to be with sourness. But apparently with coffee, that's not the case. You can definitely, you taste the fruitiness at the beginning of it, and then it does have that bitterness aftertaste. And it's not very bitter because all my coffee, I've always been a black coffee drinker. I've always been a dark roast. It's always been Maxwell House. And then before I started doing all this stuff. And then I don't really get the sweetness too much. That could be the way that I prep it. Normally they talk with light roast that you want to do like a pour over, which is something that I do plan on integrating into the roast rates as we go. So that could be just the way that I brew it. I'm not entirely sure. Because, again, I'm not the most knowledgeable person on coffee, like the preparations and the different flavors that you can pull out of it by doing a pour over compared to doing the brew like I do. Because I've just got my old school bun fashion coffee maker. I mean, that I got from work when we went to our K-Cups instead of grounds. But it's not a bad taste. I'm more likely going to I have to get some different roasts to get that full roast rate experience. Exactly. You got it, Alpha. But with the Ethiopian, I definitely found that I enjoyed it more in blends than I did just by itself. Yeah, you should do a compare with your old Folgers. Are you going to have a rank list, maybe even on stream, of those coffees? I've been kind of doing it as we go. For example, my favorite coffee so far was the Indonesian that we did. That was the first dark roast that we tasted. And that was wonderful. And I actually blended that with the Ethiopian that we did in the first roast rate. Oh, words. Why do I have to articulate? Right? Articulate? That's when you put two of the same. Whatever. But, so the Indonesian was first. After the Indonesian, when we did the Peruvian, that was the second one. And that was actually, the Peruvian was a medium dark roast. which would make sense with the way that my palate works, the way that I enjoy my coffee. It would make sense that you would. Um, something easier to say. Thanks, VSB. But that it just makes sense. After the Peruvian, I would have gone the Colombian. After the Colombian, I'd probably give the Kenya because it's not the. But I also feel bad for the Ethiopian because it was the first one that I did. It was the first time I've ever ground my own beans. It was the first time I'd ever used that grinder that I had. So I don't necessarily know if I gave it like a proper testing. I know that the more I drank it, the more I liked it, but I don't know if that was just me getting used to the flavors, kind of like, when you're a kid and you eat enough vegetables, eventually you start liking the vegetables, that kind of thing. I don't know if it was that, if that's what was happening. I do know that when I started blending the Ethiopian with darker roasts, I really enjoyed it. When I put the Ethiopian with the Peruvian, it took all the bitterness out of the entire cup of coffee. Like, there was no bitter aftertaste. There was nothing like that. It was a very well blend of the flavors. But this is an excellent cup of coffee. There's very seldom such thing as a bad cup of coffee. But we will be drinking this for the rest of the night and most likely the rest of the week. So, because I'm not going to be streaming next Sunday, I'm probably just going to carry this in through the rest of the week. Again, we're going to hang out with, me and Devin are going to hang out with Major Payne over the weekend this weekend. So I'm going to be out of town all weekend. But so I'll probably not do a roast rate on Wednesday, and then we'll just pick it up on the week after that. But yeah, it's another very outstanding cup of coffee. Brian does a wonderful job on his roasts. I couldn't ask for a better person to supply me with the beans that I have. He does an excellent job, and he's very friendly. And I couldn't be doing this without him. I mean, at least not with the whole personal connection that I feel that I've got with him. But yeah, it's definitely fruity. You get and I don't say fruity like sweetness, but it's got the fruity like undertone, if that makes sense. It's kind of like when you drink a cream soda Dr. Pepper. The cream soda taste is there, and that's already a sweet beverage, so maybe that's not a good comparison. But maybe like you can taste the hints of the added flavors, and that is like the underlying taste. And it's definitely a nice pairing. I don't quite get the milk chocolate sweetness like it talks about, but that could also be because he roasted it longer in order to try to get it fit more for me. There's a possibility that you could have lost some of that. And like I also said, instead of doing like a pour over or whatever, or instead of doing not the percolation, because it's not a percolation, because it's technically a pour over from the bun, but it's not like the device that they have for it. It like the coffee, like the water sits in the coffee, and it acquires all of the same things that happen as it pours through the filter. And then it sits in there and allows you to grab the flavors of the coffee better. And then you plunge down, for the lack of a better word, I guess. And then it'll filter through the filter, and then that's how you get your pour over coffee. But that's another thing that I learned from Brian. It's watching the beans get made, and he's a very knowledgeable person. He's actually a history teacher at the school that he works at, obviously. and he's just very knowledgeable about the whole process. He's been doing it for a year or so now, and like I said, like I've been saying, like I always say, I couldn't ask for a better person to be roasting my beans. But we'll go back to our coffee break screen, and I will go fill up my cup, and then we'll go take down a spider. How's that sound? All right, so give me a couple seconds, up to a minute. I will go fill up my cup, and we'll be back. All right.